Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Modern Firm, where we speak with forward-thinking leaders in the accounting, tax, and finance world. Today, I'm thrilled to have Josh Greenbaum with me. He is the founder of CFO Minded and is doing really great things. So, Josh, great to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, Josh, let's start by talking about your journey. You've had a very interesting path. I'd love if you could take us through that.
Yeah, so I got going about 16 years ago, and in essence, I really found that I enjoyed working with small businesses more than the larger ones. And having started my career at PricewaterhouseCoopers, it obviously gave me exposure to the great big companies out there, and I was very grateful for that time between Silicon Valley and Los Angeles, and got to see tech and entertainment and all these fun industries. And going back to the comment that it was actually taking that expertise and taking that sort of intellectual nature that a big company gets the benefit of and bringing that to small businesses, because I feel like small businesses are the backbone of every community and really like the lifeblood of a lot of families and small towns, and they really can use that expertise, and that's really where things got started for me. And I think it was funny moment. I guess I was early to the fractional game that is now becoming so prevalent, but I really got to dip my toe in helping companies raise money and go through exits and understanding how investors look at companies versus owners of companies and all these different dynamics. And I'm very grateful for that time. And like you said, I decided to write a book about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a really nice opportunity for me to step back and really think about what have I learned and what have I absorbed and what are the common things that I talk about, and really trying to, contextualize all this stuff that we do day in, day out. And it becomes, I don't want to say it becomes mindless, but it does become very natural, I should say. And so to really think about the commonality across the board between a variety of industries and businesses and mindsets, how does one become, to the name of my company, CFO Minded, and to really think like a CFO and for those to lead like a CFO.
Thank you for sharing that. There's definitely a huge difference, between big companies and small companies and different approaches. So, what is your approach, when dealing with small businesses and trying to help them out?
There's really a twofold approach that I take. One is, generally speaking, I'll say something's on fire, something's problematic or changing, or an outgoing bookkeeper or some urgent need. I think generally speaking, when someone is either, with the exception of just starting a company brand new, but when someone's making a personnel shift in any regard, there's usually something that is a point of pain or unsatisfaction or whatever it is. So I think it becomes really important to really understand that and hear the business owner, while at the same time proactively really leading the charge and ensuring that we are putting best practices in place, ensuring there's a budget, ensuring there's a clear understanding of where the business owner wants to go with the business, so that I both understand the short-term pain points with the long-term vision, and that we're aligning things. Because what is most unhelpful for the business owner is to just continue things as things are.
Yeah.
And if that's all you're going to do, then from my perspective, and to provide a higher level service, there's not value there. You can go to just a general bookkeeper, which is also great in some needs.
Yeah. Totally. So essentially what you do is you kind of understand the entire scope of things, kind of get like a bird's eye view of what's working, what's maybe not, and then you implement ways to fix that, correct?
Exactly.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. So one of the big topics that you focus on is like financial anxieties. It's very common nowadays, right? Lots of entrepreneurs face that. So from your perspective, why is that so common among business owners, and how do you help them, overcome that? Let's say everything else is going good, but their mindset is just not there, and ultimately that'll lead to a firm that's not doing well. So what do you start with to kind of help them get over that?
Well, piggybacking the name of my book, Numbers Scare Me and Other
Yeah,
Excuses, which I'm sure we'll talk about more,
for
I
sure.
think that there's a general fear
Yeah,
and intimidation by numbers, quote
yeah,
unquote, and therefore then an intimidation of financial statements and what are these and what do they mean and what should I be looking for. And so to me, it becomes really important to help business owners really lean into unit economics and understanding the core element of their business and their business model, and what are they selling and what do they make from it and all those things. So that becomes kind of education 101 that I lead with. And secondary to that, from what you were saying is cash flow is always generally it's always a big issue. And in particular, over the past 3 years, it's probably been one of the top issues in between coming out of COVID and so many people receiving COVID loans, which inflated cash flow and didn't really examine the business model that could have had leakage in cash all the way to raising, rising prices now and things of that nature, rising labor costs. And so from that, again, understanding cash flow, but again, diving into the operations of the business and really getting clear on what do each of the people in your organization do? And is there efficiency? Is there inefficiency? Can we really look at what the needs of the business are in effort of generating the most revenue and profit?
I would agree with you that, the biggest cause of anxiety or fear usually comes down to not knowing or not taking action, right? So when you work with these small businesses and you're helping them overcome this financial anxiety, what is like some of the most common issues that you see that they have within the business that's causing that stress?
Yeah, well, definitely from a pure accounting standpoint, I think that there's a general lack of understanding. There's a lot that can get delegated down to a bookkeeper or an accountant in whatever regard, which the business owner then just lets go. And I think that that's really dangerous. Very much second and parallel to that, that I've seen a lot is even when you think about risk mitigation and password management, it seems like a funny thing to a lot of people, and a lot of business owners default to a Google sheet that has all the logins and passwords that at some point get shared with a lot of people. And
Yeah.
I see this all the way through to bank logins, to, PayPal, Stripe, and all these things that are like the core, like you need to protect those things.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so understanding risk, understanding, again, going back to the financial statements, these are the core things where I think people find this element of either I just didn't know or I thought I was doing it right. But those are the things that people need to think about in their business.
Yeah, 100% I agree with you. And I would say that's something that a lot of firm owners struggle with, right? And a lot of the clients that we speak with as well, they don't know everything and they think that they could just do it themselves, right? And they're scared to ask for help. They're wary of anyone who's offering help. And so that's where a lot of the time they slack, right? Is that they don't want to ask for help and then things get messy and they're focusing on something that they're not experts in, right? I always tell people go to an expert, hire an expert to do something for you that you don't know how to do yourself, right? Especially with a lot of this new technology and everything, like you said. So, on that note, what trends are you seeing, in the financial management space for small businesses, especially with in 2025, everything is going crazy, right? Whether it's AI or tariffs or whatever the case may be. How are you seeing things start to shift if you are?
Well, from the firm standpoint, from the
Yeah.
CFO firm standpoint, what I'm seeing is niching. I think to back up, it was I'm going to be a bookkeeper or I'm going to offer controller services or CFO services. And now there's such a trend where people are getting much more oriented around an industry. And I think that that's to great benefit of business owners. In particular, with so many people going fractional, I think it's wonderful because what it's really speaking to is that there's not necessarily a need for full-time staff at organizations anymore, and you still need that level of expertise. And sometimes the curse can be, sure, I can do bookkeeping, but I don't have a strong understanding of your industry. So as you start to look at a more sophisticated role, such as a controller or CFO, you actually, as a business owner, given the what you're going to pay for that service, you should lean on some industry expertise. And for that service to then go beyond the nuance of your industry, perhaps some benchmarking that can exist across different organizations, different companies, your peers. And so I've seen that trend a lot where someone's just focused on doctors or just focused on serving lawyers. And I think that that's a really great trend, a great direction for the practice to go as
Yeah.
a controller level.
Just niching, right? Is
Correct.
people want someone who's offering something to kind of relate to their situation, right? And you get that when you specialize for sure. I know you talk about a lot of these things in your book, so I'd love to touch on that, right? Your book, Numbers Scare Me and Other Excuses. It's a great resource, for business owners looking to take control of their finances. So I'd love if you could kind of walk us through how's that process like, writing a book and going through that.
Thank you. It was a really fun process.
Yeah.
What led ultimately to the book was me thinking about me being challenged with questions from a business coach that I hired to think about what is a CFO and who am I as a CFO and who do I want to be as a CFO. And like I've talked about a couple times, really thinking about that educational piece and to think about how much more productive a conversation with a client is when they have a fundamental understanding. And to know that they may not even have that base level, and that can feel like frustration from us as the professionals, as the subject matter experts in accounting and finance, where you want to have a more, let's say, intellectual conversation, but then those topics are too over the head of a business owner.
For sure.
And the book was an opportunity for me to step back and work with my editor, where my editor was even her own business owner for her sole practitioner business. And she's like, I really need this. And she was able to chime in and say, I need you to dumb this down, dumb this down. These words are confusing. Dumb it down, dumb it down. And ultimately, that process allowed me to really find the words to explain things in a very simplistic and clear manner to business owners. And I think, for me, what it's ultimately done is it's helped me differentiate myself and become more approachable to those business owners along the way. So it was a really fun exercise to go through and think about cash versus accrual and what is a balance sheet and what is a P&L and what are different scenarios and what is cost of goods and what is a costing methodology. And I went down to the basic of thinking about a coffee shop and to think really simplistically of barista versus a cashier and cost of goods versus operating expenses. And again, to really find that simplistic example that we're all comfortable with in our day-to-day lives and bring that back to finance and bring that back to accounting because I think it becomes so much more relatable.
Oh, 100%, especially in the accounting world and in this space, there's not a lot of that, right? And everyone knows how hard it is to write a book. I mean, I've never done it, but I've heard that it's very hard. You gotta the editing process and making sure everything's refined and whatnot. So that definitely gives you credibility in that space, especially, the value from that helping owners who are struggling, right? That's the core of it, essentially. So are we seeing a part two of the book, or is it just the one, or what are your plans moving
Yeah,
forward?
I have a little bit of a part two that I've been playing with for a couple of years
Yeah.
and really thinking about how I want it delivered. And the essence of the book is I started thinking about this idea. This will sound more like a life coach comment, but life design meeting CFO. And what I mean by that is coming out of an era of hustle culture and scale and getting to an exit and all these things, that's only one side. There's also the side of people wanting to sustain their business and have it continue to, provide the income that it does. Or there's the person who wants to take their business that they built and turn it into passive income and step back. And what I think really, I'll echo your words, can get lost in the conversation from the accounting professional side to the business owner is kind of this: what do you want? And to get really clear on what do you want, because from that vision, you can lead to the strategic planning and the budgeting and get clear on, let's not just do same as last year, but let's get in really deep and perhaps let's go really real with the small business. Maybe somebody wants to start a family with their significant other. And they don't want to get rid of the business and they're not in a place that they're trying to sell the business, but they want to get a really strong operator in place so that they can step back and start to build a family. And
Yep.
those are just like the really real things that people deal with and talk about each day. And again, to frame accounting and the CFO role through that and to bring it back to a budget, to bring it back to unit economics, to bring it back to what is my overhead, what is seasonality in the business, and all these topics, they all become very relevant within. So that's what I'm noodling around with for book number two.
I think that ties in great with what you're doing. And I actually see the market how it is now, right? People are switching from, hating their accountant because a lot of the time it's just bookkeeping, right? They'll do your taxes, they'll do your bookkeeping, and you kind of never hear from them. You don't understand what any of this means. We're seeing a shift in this space where people want to go to advisors, right? People who understand their situation are going to explain to them what's not working, how to fix it, everything like that. So I definitely see the value with that. When is that coming out? When is book two, or is it kind of just on the radar at this point?
No, we'll see. I have kind of a couple different 80% done versions. So
Yeah,
I need to really sit down and think about how I'm going to pull it together. I think this one will be more of an ebook
yeah,
and to speak again to specifically the CFO role and how I see my services augmenting through this is I want it to start to feel a little bit more like coaching and to start to remove it from this day-to-day accounting and bookkeeping kind of a realm. And I want this next book or ebook to be maybe I'm envisioning a little bit of book plus workbook plus, real deliverables that I
totally.
can provide back to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Josh, another quick question for you that I wanted to touch on is where do you see yourself taking CFO Minded, 5 years down the line do you have any use of AI that you're thinking of or with all the new technologies, or what do you see regarding that, right, in the next few years?
So going back to the niche question,
Yeah,
I really want to niche around this definition of what is a great CFO. And from that, and from what we just talked about with the potential of book two, to start to build a network of CFOs under me who understand this deliverable. What's really important to me when I look at not just look at my peers out there, but also to think about what I want as a business owner is I don't want to build a firm. And I think even in my choice to work for myself and build my own practice, no different than others who are perhaps new or thinking about becoming a fractional CFO themselves, they want that autonomy. And I don't know that everyone actually wants to join a firm. And to find this cohesiveness between me leading with this life design meet CFO starting point of an engagement and to build this network of CFOs where they have more subject matter expertise within their respective industry. So that's a little bit the direction that I'm looking at being able to build towards.
totally. And what would be your one piece of advice to give to, people who want to join something like this or to improve their skill set? And what's like the one piece of advice and your expertise that you would give to someone who's maybe struggling to get
Yeah.
into that?
So from a business owner perspective, the one piece of advice is really thinking about what are my services, what are my products that I'm selling, and not just what am I selling, but more importantly, what are people buying?
Yeah,
And to think about we'll talk about this from a CFO perspective. Are people buying bookkeeping services? Are they buying advisory services? Are they buying my 90-minute office hour ad hoc engagement, or do they stick around for 4, 5, 6, 7 years?
yeah,
To really understand what am I offering, what are people buying, and then to go through this exercise of unit economics of what does it take to fulfill that. So I really understand what people are buying and how profitable it is to me, because the profitability is obviously the sustainability of the business. So that to me is the best place someone can start on this business owner lens. On the CFO lens, I think a lot about people who are considering or desiring to become their own fractional CFO and maybe quit their corporate job or the firm job and go on their own. What to me, my two pieces of advice that I like to give people are number one, make sure you have a good anchor client and know that you don't have to just jump and go all in. Dip your toe in, see if you even like it, because it's a different skill set than it is when you're working within a more formal W-2 type of organization.
totally.
So that's number one. Number two, which I think is the most important, is don't discount yourself just because you're new. Really think about what a market rate is, because once you get going at discounted rates, that's what people get used to. And quite frankly, that's what you get used to selling yourself at. And we all have our potential insecurities around how much should I charge, what is the right amount. And if you start discounting, there is a little deterioration of self-worth that can happen. So
Yeah.
even though you're new, don't discount what you're able to deliver to people even on day one.
That is huge. I wish more people could hear that. A lot of people, I agree with you. They start off new and they try to, give the best rate or give huge discounts, even though it doesn't make sense, right? Just to kind of get the sale and to build that confidence. But I think that sticking and believing in the value that your product or your service is bringing and delivering on that is ultimately the most important thing, right? Rather than just giving discounts, because like you said, that just leads to mental deterioration and you're not going to believe in yourself. If you think that you're not worth X amount, then why should anyone pay you for that, right?
Exactly.
So Josh, I think this was a very fruitful conversation, and I think the audience is going to get a lot of value from this. If they want to, reach out to you to learn more about CFO Minded or your book or to get in contact with you, where can people find you?
So everything's available at cfominded.com. And one thing that I want to call out specifically is I do offer an office hours engagement where it's 90 minutes and there's no engagement letter. We just open the floor to whatever you want to talk about or work through. And I find that has been very helpful for people who are either new to working with the CFO or they really just have a quick thing that they want to solve. And it really allows us to engage without thinking about a 3 month or 6 month or 12 month. So I would encourage people to go to my website and find the office hours engagement.
Perfect. All right, Josh. Well, we will link everything to your information in the show notes, your LinkedIn, your business, your website, everything like that. Thank you so much for hopping on once again, and I really do think that this was a very fruitful episode.
Great. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you, Josh.